So I'm Larry Sufferton. I'm the Cook County Commissioner who has the privilege of representing Evanston. For the last 16 years that I've represented Evanston, I've put on this kind of a seminar when the assessors come out with new numbers, and then 4 or 5 months later, when the Board of Review is open, I do a second one. My mantra is you need to appeal twice a year, because you're the only ones watching your property. You're the only ones who can make sure you're paying your fair share of taxes as we go forward. Now, tonight we're going to talk about the new assessments that were mailed last Friday that some of you got the last couple of days. You also have gotten in the mail hundreds of letters from what I call the miracle work lawyers. They're going to save you so much money you can buy a summer home. You can put your kids through college. They are probably good lawyers. I'm going to say that. But you don't need them. You should only use them if you are intimidated by the process and you feel it would be a lot easier for you to use a lawyer to interact with it. We have tried to turn this system into a fair system with transparency to give you a chance to understand your things. Now, last November, we elected a new assessor. This community overwhelmingly voted for Fritz Kagi to be the assessor. He ran on a platform of making sure that we had fair, across-the-board assessments. One of the problems with previous assessments is that they were not across-the-board fair. Interesting, if you remember the Tribune story about assessments, it said the northern part of Cook County had the fairest assessments, and that's because we appealed the most. And I'm proud of the fact that I probably played a role in those appeals. Now, with me tonight back here is Samantha Steel. Samantha is an Evanston resident who is now one of the top people with Assessor Kagi. She's an experienced assessor from a previous state where she worked, and with her staff, we're working to try to get these numbers to be accurate. Now, we're going to just run through some slides, and then I want to make sure that you all leave filling out one of these forms. Now, in the forms you have in front of you, you'll see that there's a letter here. The R letter means it's residential, and on the other side, there's a C, and it means condo. Okay? How many people here live in condos? Okay. Now, how many of you live in condos with more than 6 units? Okay, those of you in condos with more than 6 units, I'm going to suggest you go back to your condo boards, because I believe the best way to deal with a condo building that's large is to have a lawyer do the assessment and appeal work. The reason being, you can have 2 units in a building that are identical units, but you each can own a different percentage of the common area. And there are a lot of other variables that are in those condominium declarations. And the way condominium buildings that are bigger than 6 units are evaluated, it's the building to building, not unit to unit. Then once they come to a value for the building, they divide up the number of units and your percentage of ownership, and that's how you get your number. So if you have more than 6 units, go talk to your condo association. I wouldn't file anything today. If they're not going to do it, then you may have to do it on your own, but it's much harder for us to help you in that situation. Now, if you're 6 units or less, and if you're in a townhouse situation, you really are very comparable to the way a residential property is done, and we can look for comparables. Now, let me just run through a few slides here. We're going to talk about how it was calculated, how the appeal, the assessment, and how you can help. We can get you help at my office over on Davis Street. Cook County has 1,800,000 parcels of land that need to have assessed valuations by the assessor's office. To accomplish that large a number, we divide it into thirds. We're the purple part on the top, and the 2019, 2022, and 2025 are the years that will be reassessed. We're the second township or town to be assessed in this start. The other one was Norwood Park, which is a much smaller community. North suburban residents appeal in the greater number. That's something, again, I'm very proud of. If you look on the top part of Cook County there, the lighter pink, that is an indication of the higher number of appeals, and those higher number of appeals have led to lower assessed values for the people who live in those areas. This map, though, shows you a pattern of what happens here in Evanston. All of the dots are individual parcels of property. And I think we gave you one of these with you to take home so you can look at it. You'll see that as the farther east you go, where it's greener, those are more appeals done by those people. The farther west you go, the redder it gets, where there are fewer appeals. The key, I think, is to appeal twice a year. Now, I'm going to tell you that, especially where we are now, we're with the assessor working very hard to try and get the valuations to the accurate valuations. It will be harder to win appeals at the assessor's office because they feel that they are using the best available data to look at the regressive sales of the last 3 years and other valuation tools that show what these properties are really worth. I describe it like watching an umpire prior to instant replay make a call, and how many times did they change their call after they made it? Almost never. We probably will have an opportunity to get some relief from the assessor, but what we're really doing is getting you ready and prepared to deal with the Board of Review. This is the areas of Evanston. It's the other document I gave you. We were just told that we're missing one neighborhood code, which I've but the median number there is how the increase in assessments from the previous assessment. So if you look at that and go back and figure out how much of an increase you received and look at where it is in the median, you'll probably be an indication of you're going to maybe pay a lot more, or you may pay less, or you may be paying the same. For my own house, the code that we're in is a 30% code, and I went up 35%. So I'm figuring I'm somewhere in the range of reasonableness. Okay, but everybody's going to have to figure that out. And I only give you this to put your mind at ease that you're not being treated in any kind of an absurd way. Yes, ma'am. That's what we're going to talk about. We're coming to that. I'm just right now getting you ready for these things. Okay, so the assessed valuation is 10% of the fair market value. The fair market value is what the assessor has started with and then takes 10% of it. So what the assessor has done is look at the sales in the area and then look at all of the other values of property in the area and has come up with a number. Now, for residences, it's 10% of the fair market value. For businesses, it's 25%. We don't deal here with businesses. We're dealing here only with residences. So when you look at your assessed value, in the old days I used to say, would you sell me your house for the amount that Assessor Berrios said it was worth? And people would say, no, my house is worth a lot more. Today, what I've been hearing is, well, I don't think I could get that. And that's why we need to appeal to see if what the fair market number is if you were selling your house. And we only know the value of your house from a sale if there is a sale. So we're not going to be able to, there's going to be a little bit of market guessing here. Okay, what are the components that make up your bill? The first one is this assessed value. Now, we're again dealing with assessed values as of January 1, 2019. This is for the tax bills to be paid in August of 2020. What we're doing here today has nothing to do with the tax bill you'll pay this August. That assessment is the old assessment, and that will be what the number they start with. But the way we put tax bills together, you multiply it by the equalizer. The equalizer is a number that comes from the Illinois Department of Revenue, and it's based upon the fact that the state has believed that County of Cook has undervalued its property for many, many years. The multiplier is currently right about 3, so they're saying that we are 300% undervalued. And that equalizer, we believe, as the new assessor works these numbers throughout the entire county, will have to come down, and that will have an impact on your tax bill. You then multiply it by the tax rate. The tax rate is generated by the Cook County clerk. The rate is taking all of the levies, and remember that governments, the city of Evanston, the 2 school districts, that we all levy in whole dollars, so they look at those whole dollars, they figure out a rate, and when you multiply all that together, that's how much you pay as your share of the taxes that are needed to be collected. So the assessed valuation is very important because it's the part that says what percentage of the whole are you responsible for. All right, now you get ways to appeal your assessment. We're here for the first step. For 30 days, we are open to appeal to the assessor. Okay, the assessor had a number of processes they've used. By the way, next Thursday night, Assessor Kagi will be at Three Crowns for the Central Neighbors meeting, and he'll be explaining the changes he's put in to try to make these assessments fairer. But we're here to talk about appealing to the assessor. After the assessor, you go to the Board of Review. The Board of Review is an independent group. It is like a court of chancery. It has the ability to look at things the assessor can't by statute. And I'll give you the examples. We had a lot of them in the first group. If you have a house that's identical to someone else's house, but your house is next to the L and their house is next to the lake, the two shouldn't have the same value. If you're next to a school, and I was told about a school today that has more gym classes than I think they have any other classes, so all day there's noise outside and by these houses, and then all night there's leagues that are going on, and so people can't sleep. So that's something we can bring to the Board of Review. Interiors of houses are not something you pick up by the assessor's office. They're looking at the outside. They're figuring out your square footage from the outside. They're looking at your neighborhood and all those other factors. They are not in a position where they know if on the inside your kitchen is 70 years old, your bathrooms are 80 years old, maybe you don't have plumbing in some parts of the house. Those are things we can bring to the Board of Review, and the Board of Review can give you relief on those things. If you're not satisfied with the assessor or the Board of Review, you can go to the state Property Tax Appeal Board, or you can go to the Circuit Court of Cook County. Going to the assessor and the Board of Review are free. Going to the Property Tax Appeal Board or the Circuit Court, you have to pay. Our goal is to get you to be satisfied when we're finished with the assessor. Now, your assessed value is not your tax liability. So when you say, well, I went up 100%, that doesn't mean you're going to go up 100% in taxes. It's not your tax rate, because we don't know what the tax rate is for next year. It's not the equalizer, because we don't know what the equalizer is for next year. And it doesn't talk about how exemptions will apply to your property. We're not going to talk about exemptions tonight, but there are a series of exemptions that you should be aware of. We will help my office at 820 Davis, Mitzi Gibbs, who's here in the building with the City of Evanston, and the assessor's office in the Skokie Courthouse will help you with your exemptions. We do that usually before the August payment, because you want the exemptions to be subtracted from your excess value. So the primary exemption is homeowners. Everybody who lives in their own home gets that. If you're over 65, you get the senior citizen exemption. You have to apply for that every year. We have a bill that was heard today in Springfield where we're hoping that they will say once you turn 65, you never get younger. And then there's the senior freeze, which is you're 65 years old and a household income under $65,000. And finally, there's a variety of disabled person exemptions. If you have a military exemption of greater than 70%, you pay no taxes on your property. And I've been fortunate enough to, as a veteran, to be at a number of veterans events where some of these disabled veterans realized for the first time that they didn't have to pay property taxes. So we'll help you deal with all of those. I'll take questions on everything at the end. So let's go back to this form here. The form, if you would fill out what's number 1 there, your name and address, and indicate if you're the owner, if it's in a trust, if you're the beneficiary of the trust. We're doing current year in number 2, the box that says current year. You don't have to put any addresses in there if the address that you put in box 1 is the same as box 2, the property you're appealing. And right below the pink line there's a place for a signature, and the owner can sign. If you know your PIN number, you can put it up in the box on the right, on the top part. We'll help you find comparables. Most of you will be appealing for lack of uniformity, which means that there are other properties that are assessed less than yours whose property are comparable to yours. We may have some that are over-evaluation. Over-evaluation would be if you have an appraisal that's a recent appraisal because you either bought the house recently or you refinanced the house recently, and that appraisal is for a number less than what the assessor has said. That's evidence to present to the assessor or to the Board of Review. Understand that it is not evidence that can automatically change this, because appraisals that are done for banks appraisals that are done for other purposes may not be the same as the kind of appraisal that usually we get when people are only looking at valuation for tax purposes. So just understand that. I had someone in the community the other day who ended up buying a house from a relative at a very, very low amount and had an appraisal to get a loan to buy it at that level, and now says their assessed valuation went up $700,000, and they said, whoa, 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 whoa. And, but that appraisal was, when you read it, it was clear that it was not going to be formidable evidence to change it. Now, if he goes out and gets a new appraisal, maybe it would be. All right, so we'll collect these tonight. We'll have you make appointments to come to our office to see Mitzi or to go to the assessor's office. Condos, if you want to do it for a condo, you just put your address. Again, we need your PIN number over on the side. You can do all of this online. Assessor Kagi's website, which is cookcountyassessor.com, has the ability for you to go online and file an appeal, to keep track of it. And we're hoping in the future we can do this. One of the things that I've said to my staff, the Board of Review has been a little farther advanced in using computers and online filing than the assessor's office, and that's not Assessor Kagi's fault. That's the people who were there before. But I think we're going to do the Board of Review at the Levy Center and use the computer lab, and we will have people who will be there, and we will file for as many people as we can online that night, because it will be the better way for you to be able to keep things and to track them. Now, we also have created a property tax portal, which is a combination of information from the treasurer's office, the county clerk's office, the recorder of deeds office, and the assessor's office. That's the www.cookcountypropertyinfo.com. That document, you put your PIN number in, it has a portal which will take you to comparable properties. Now, unfortunately, because these were just put out on Friday, as of earlier today, they did not have the new assessments for Evanston there, but we're pretty sure they will be up tomorrow morning. And if you go to that box, you'll be able to find things. These are important websites for you to keep. Our portal, which has a number of things for you to follow, the Board of Review, the assessor, and the treasurer's office. With that, I will stop and I'll take questions. And I know I had somebody who was jumping out of their chair right here. Or maybe you're not. Oh, okay. And over here, who? Anyone? Questions? Okay, yes, sir.
So I turned in a form already, and now you're telling me that I can keep better track of it as I do it online?
Well, I'm going to tell you, though, if you've already turned in a form, start that with the next time, because I don't want to get you into trying to find that form and pull it out, and I don't want you to have two forms, which sometimes have happened at the assessor, and one, they both get disqualified. If you've got one in, stick with the one you've got for now. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And so I assume that it will be granted because
Wait, unless you were lying about your age. I mean, you don't look 65 to me. That's a joke. Samantha, you can laugh.
2018 year, right? 2018.
That's for, yes, because that's for the tax bill we're going to have this August, okay? The freeze that you put in is an exemption to go against the tax bill for this August. The assessed valuation we're talking about today is for a year from August. Oh. And we'll know when you get your bill if it's there, and if it's not there, we'll help you get it back on there.
So the freeze is whatever the tax was, whatever the value was in 2018, right?
No, if you qualify for the freeze, did you apply for the senior freeze?
Yes.
Okay. If the senior freeze is granted, yes, it will be whatever it is in 2018 and stay there. The best deal out there, and there are people who were here today who got senior freezes in 1992, and so they're frozen way down here, okay? It's a great deal, okay? But every now and then, in 2008, when we had a reduction in values in the area, we had to get a lot of people who had freezes to start over again because their property was not worth as much as the freeze. So we have to keep working at that, okay? But you'll get a response from the assessor's office, and bring it into our office and we'll help you understand it. Yes, sir.
Two easy questions, but first, thank you for your service, Commissioner. This is very helpful. One is, And secondly, they're wondering if there's another presentation scheduled when and where.
Okay. The presentation is on my website, which is sufferdin.org. And my staff, in fact, I think we may be the next slide. Yep, right there. Michelle Jordan, who is outside, is my staff person who runs the office. She and Mary Rita Litke, who are both lawyers, are the primary people who will be doing the research for you in our office. And so the presentation is at sufferdin.org. It's online. We'll see if we do this again. We'll see what kind of reaction we have. Right now, I want to try to drive people to the office. We've been getting about 30 people a day. I think it's going to pick up because, remember, they only mailed on Friday and people didn't get them until Monday. So if we're doing 30 people a day at this level, I think it's going to increase. And I wanted to try to drive people to the office to make it easier and drive people here to Mitzi Gibbs. And many of you may have dealt with Mitzi. She does a really good job here in Evanston. Yes, ma'am. Condos are not treated as with comparable issues, okay? Because you look at, if it's more than 6 units, what you're looking at is the value of the building compared to value of other buildings of similar size and shape. That's why if you have more than 6 units, I encourage you to get a lawyer because it gets to be a little more complicated and you want to get the lowest possible number. If your building doesn't do it, we can try and help you, but we're probably going to be able to help you at the Board of Review where we can argue that your condo unit, you bought it last year for $200,000 and they're now saying it's worth $300,000. It couldn't have gone up that high in a short period of time from your purchase, and the Board of Review can take that into account and make your building or your condo unit an outlier compared to the rest. But it's much better if they're bigger to do the building. If it's 6 units or less, you go through the same process and you can probably find townhouses that are comparable. Now you have a question. Yes? We have another hearing just like this, though I'll probably do it at the Levy Center and use the computer lab because I want to try and get drive as many people to file online. And I counted there 24 computers the other day, and I think we could put that together with them. But the Board of Review doesn't happen until the assessor finishes Evanston. And the deadline is the 15th. You have then another week to get in any additional evidence. They then have to evaluate all of the appeals, and then at some point they will certify the number with their adjustments to the Board of Review, and then the Board of Review will tell us when they're ready to put us into rotation and have Evanston. But I can't tell you when it is because it's really dependent upon the work and the volume of work that the assessor's office will have and how long it will take them to handle all the appeals. Second question. Recent sales can be helpful, but tomorrow, hopefully when you go to the portal, there'll be a map and it'll show you your property. If you hit on that map, there'll be a box that opens up and it says comparable properties. And if you hit that, a map will pop up and there'll be little flags indicating properties that could be the values that you want to look at to use to challenge, okay? And we're constantly trying to make this easier, but understand the assessor is using one set of numbers to get to where they are, and those numbers don't take into account every other variable that's potentially out there. So we may find a comparable that they didn't look at. If you look on their website, they'll show you some comparables that are a little bit different than the ones that will come up on the portal, but all in all, we're trying to help you find something that would give you a legal argument to say, reduce me. I mean, we'd love to help everybody get a reduction, but remember, ultimately, everybody's got to pay their fair share. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, I have a property of 620 babies. This is commercial, but sometimes every year might be 20%, 50% increase, I understand. But this time I have a couple of days ago, about 500% increase.
Okay. Now, you're a very lucky man that you came here tonight. Samantha Steel, who's behind the pillar there, is one of the people in charge of commercial valuation. Commercial valuation, the assessor is working very hard to figure out a fairer way to do commercial assessments. And remember, it looks like it's about 12.5% of Evanston's land is commercial, okay? So the vast majority of our taxpayers are residential. The commercial taxpayers, we're trying to figure out what is the fairest way to do it. The assessor has a bill in Springfield to try and do it on actual cash basis, to look at your income tax returns, to look at your rent rolls and other things like that. I think when we finish, if you talk to Samantha, she can tell you about this commercial property and how that number was obtained. I learned a long time ago that I'm inept when we're trying to deal with commercial properties. I need to deal with the voters who own properties and our residents, because that's an easier thing for an office like mine to deal with. There are too many variables in a commercial assessment. So, but she's here, and that's why you're a lucky man tonight. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that you can appeal or have an exemption is being a homeowner. Now, we've never taken a homeowner.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to tell you. I didn't want to go into exemptions tonight. I showed what they are. If you make an appointment with our office, we'll help you get your homeowner's exemption, and we'll do what's called a certificate of error. We can go back 3 years and get you some relief. You'll actually get a refund, and we'll help you do that. We try to do that after we finish these appeals, because we'll be in a rush, but then we want to have it ready so in the August tax bill you have the homeowner's exemption there. Yes, the man in orange was.
I'm wondering, single family versus multiple family home. Ours is inhabited as single family but listed as 211, 6 units.
So it could be that that's a bad classification. If in fact it is a single family that was converted from a 2-flat or a 3-flat to single family, that is something we can put you in touch with the assessor's office. They can have a field inspection done, come out and verify that it is now a single family, and that could change the classification, and that could have an effect on your property, because it'll have an effect on what the comparables are we'd be looking at.
Exactly. So is it a good idea to make an appointment with?
Have you make an appointment with my office? We'll help you get the assessor to come out. So when you leave, Michelle Jordan will be at the desk out there, so make an appointment to come and see her. But you know, that's not, like, right now I'm trying to only deal with people who are worried about their assessments. So if you could wait till April 16th, it would be great. Yes, sir.
Of a reduction do you receive if you have a homeowner exemption from what the normal rate would be?
Well, I think the average homeowner exemption is around $600. Okay, so it's not a huge amount of money, but if you have that and then you're over 65, you may be able to get more. If you have a disability, they can add up. But the homeowner exemption comes off of the assessed valuation, so it has a direct effect on lowering your portion of the tax bill.
And primary residence
Well, you have to live there. Yeah, and you can't have a house in Florida and get an exemption for homeowners in Florida and then get an exemption for homeowners here. We actually have had, unfortunately, a number of people who thought they could get homeowner exemptions in 2 states, and we passed a law a few years back, and I think the last number I saw was $3 million worth of payment that were repaid to the county by people who were trying to illegally get an extra homeowner exemption. So you're going to get caught if you're trying to do it. Yes, sir.
So my assessment went down, so should I just forget about it?
No. Well, I don't know that I'd brag about it with this group of people right now. But no, my feeling is you need to appeal. The beauty of our appellate system here, the assessor or the Board of Review can't raise your assessment. They can only lower it. So even though yours went down, it may still not be right. Our goal is to make sure you're only paying your fair share of the taxes, so I would still file an appeal. Yes, ma'am.
So is this something that we should only do every 3 years?
No, you should do it every year. Every year. I believe that by doing it every year, you are perfecting the value of your property. And take a block with 10 houses. 5 houses appeal and get some reduction. The other 5 are going to pay more, okay? Everybody should be appealing. And if you say, oh, I'll only do it every 3 years, well, then the second year when 5 other people appeal and get reductions, you're going up. The third year when others appeal, you're going up. You need to be there to protect your own value.
But even though it's assessed every 3 years?
Well, it's assessed every 3 years, but the value is every year. And the value is of January 1st of the year that we're in. We pay our taxes a year in arrears here in Cook County because during the Depression, the Cook County Board gave everybody a one-year holiday when people didn't have enough money, and we've never caught up. And so that puts us, that actually enters into the issue with the equalizer because the rest of the state pays on the current year. Okay? Yeah, the man behind you, I'll get back to you. Yes?
Sure, just two quick questions. I filled out my form when I was waiting on it.
Yeah.
And I take both the over-evaluation and the lack of conforming seconds.
That's not a problem at all. Now, so if you've got an appraisal, it'll help. But okay, if you don't, then we'll just help you find the comparables that would help you.
Okay, so then we need to make an appointment with someone in your office.
Right, and they'll be out at the table. I think the crowd is now finally down out there. Yes, ma'am. I'll come back to you. Yeah.
So my question about the appraisal, so how recent is it?
I would say 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, another question, my neighbor just bought the house where on the side of in foreclosure. So does that-
Well, foreclosure is not going to be helpful to you because it's a depressed price. Okay, I may have mentioned here, I can't remember. Someone called me the other day, and he was all upset because his went up $700,000 with this, and he ended up buying the property in a closed relative sale to avoid somebody being in foreclosure, and so he paid way under the market value. So foreclosure sales are usually not good in this process.
But in the recent case, like market so good, it's very bank even, made a development for the houses.
Well, you can make the argument. I'm just telling you, I don't think it'll work. Yes, sir.
Many years ago, right, it was so high, with the bill when the township office was over there at,
On Dodge and Main, yes.
and it seems like we went over, I don't know, it was future 3 years or back 3 years, it seems like we did 3 years, but this particular situation, I would do 1 year?
Well, you can go back 3 years on a certificate of error if you don't have the right exemptions or if we can prove that there's been a mistake. You may have done that and gone back 3 years. We don't go forward 3 years. We do things 1 year at a time.
So I can get help at your office to do that?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
I haven't appealed the last 2 years.
Well, we have to see. Not appealing is not the reason to get a certificate of error. If you don't have an exemption or something else, then you have maybe a potential for a certificate of error. Yes, ma'am.
Can I go online and see if I filed for that exemption?
Absolutely. If you go to the portal, let me just go back here. I got to remember which way to go. The Cook County PropertyInfo.com. It'll tell you what your exemptions are. Okay. Over here on this side. Yes, ma'am.
It'll tell me that I filed.
Yeah. Well, it'll tell you if you have it. Okay. And make sure you turn in the appeals as you're leaving. 1 second. I've got this lady. I'll come back to you. Every year. Well, we never know, okay? The problem is this in the first year of the triad, we know that we're starting, okay? Next year, it's going to be dependent upon where they are in their workload, okay? Now, everybody won't get a letter next year. They will send out a bunch of letters because the assessor will correct errors they think they've made, or if they disagree with the Board of Review. If the Board of Review gives you a reduction, the assessor the following year can raise it. And that often is done. That's why you got to do it every year, both of them. I know it's counterintuitive, but I tell people that the property tax system in Illinois is like the kids' game whack-a-mole. If you push down here, they pops up here. And so you've got to only handle the areas you can push down and control. Yes, ma'am, over here, yes. The appraisal for a foreclosure is not going to help you. And I wouldn't go out and buy an appraisal unless you're refinancing. You may, when we get to the Board of Review, if you've thought this out and we've helped you look for comparable properties, maybe it would be worth paying for an appraisal at that point. They're usually somewhere between $250 and $500. But, the question is, it may or may not help you. Over here. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Yes, ma'am.
How can I find out?
You got younger, right? You just realized you got younger. No.
It's not what you're into.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how do I know what the deadline is to appeal next year?
Well, hopefully, the way you got here tonight, hopefully you gave us your email address, and we'll be sending out information and trying to let everybody know we're going to be doing this. Same thing is true with the Board of Review. That's why we wanted your email addresses if you have them.
Okay, and when you said 2 times a year, appeal 2 times a year.
Whenever the assessor is open for 30 days, and then whenever the Board of Review is open for 30 days.
Appeal to the assessor as well?
As the Board of Review, yeah.
No, if I've already filed with the Board of Review electronically.
Well, no, what you filed with the Board of Review just to be notified when they're open. You can't file with them until they're open. But well, now we're talking this year. Everything goes forward. Nothing ever goes backwards. We always go forward. You need to apply twice a year. Old appeals don't have anything to do with this year. Those were appeals of the old assessments, not the new assessments.
So how can I do it electronically?
Yep. But you can only do it when they're open. And so the Board of Review is not open yet. You can do the assessor right now online.
And that's at
CookCountyAssessor.com, right down there.
And it'll say somewhere on the site.
It'll say file an appeal. And it'll say Evanston is open and Norwood Park is open. And on April 1st, New Trier will be open. But we'll end on April 15th. New Trier will end on April 30th. So there's a lot of overlapping. I think Norwood Park maybe closes tomorrow. Yes? 2 more questions. Yeah.
So for the future then, I can expect surely that this appeal window is around this time of year. And then
Generally, yeah. We'll let you know. Right. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stand here and answer questions for as long as people want, but so if anybody's got another general question, you haven't asked one yet.
What specific changes is the new assessor Katie going to make that's going to help us not have to go through this process?
Well, what he, everybody thinks that they can invent the perfect mousetrap, okay? And so what he believes, and I want you to think about 1,800,000 parcels. Can any one person get all of them correct? Okay, there's so many variables. We had a seminar by some of the experts who said that on your properties there are 26 different issues that need to be looked at before you come to a final number. 26 different things they look at. Size, construction, is it masonry, is it whatever. The assessor is going to try to get these properties as close to what we would believe our property is worth. Okay? I wish him well, and I'm all in favor of him doing this, but I think it's going to be hard, and I think it's going to take a number of cycles. But I think if we get closer, it's going to be the question of, you're here because you thought you had a heart attack when you opened the letter, okay? In the future, if he's gotten this better, the number of people who think they've had a heart attack is going to be smaller, and the number of people who feel the necessity to come to a meeting like this and file an appeal is going to be smaller. I hope he can pull that off. If you think it's bad for you, there's one commercial property in Evanston that I looked at that had he talked about, 400% increase? And there's another property in downtown Evanston that I believe had a 600% increase. And frankly, I don't know how, because we don't have, if 12% of our property is commercial, I don't know how we get that person down. And if that stays, I don't know how they stay in business. I mean, and those are issues we're going to have to deal with, because you can't drive people out of business based upon the value. And if you say, well, gee, you've had a bargain for the last 20 years, but now you won't be able to go forward with your business, I don't think that's fair. So this is going to be a trial and error. And at this point, I found this funny because 16 years ago I started doing these seminars by myself, and then eventually Jim Houlihan called me up and said, can I come to your seminars and start saying things? And so then the assessor started coming with me. So I'm back here today introducing that there's a representative of the assessor here, and I'm doing the seminars again, and we're going to keep doing them, and hopefully in the future we'll all be in here together. But they're not quite totally sure of the full effect of everything they've done. That's why I encourage you, if you're around next Thursday, the assessor himself will be at 3 Crowns for the Central Street Neighbors meeting. I think it's at 6:30 there. You know, I'd say go and ask him directly. Yep. Last 2 questions. Yes. Twice a year. Once to the assessor, once to the Board of Review. Yeah. Last question.
Okay. About a neighborhood.
The neighborhood codes.
Yes.
Okay, so what happens is the assessor has gone through Evanston and has tried to find homes that are more comparable to each other and has created these neighborhood codes. Now, on that one I gave you, which I admit is hard to look at, where is it? Here, if you look at the 50 on the lake, the 50% increase, that lake code is something I encourage the assessor to do, because when I started doing these, people on the lakefront were getting huge tax breaks because they were using all the homes to the west as comparables who were clearly not in the same value. And I said, you've got to have apples to apples. And so those people out there are pretty high. But I'm going to tell you that I called a number of people there because I knew the number would be high, including the mayor who lives out there. But I called one guy and I said, you know, I want you to be aware that you're going to get a pretty significant number. He said, I got a lawyer, you know, I'll just pay what they tell me. So there are people whose attitude towards this is a little bit different than the rest of us who are going to worry about how are we going to make the payment. So these codes are supposed to be there to help us make sure that you're comparing your house to houses that are similar to it. And there was a gentleman who asked the question, if we can't find a comparable house within your code, we'll go to the next code. Yeah, yeah. All right, I'm going to stop here, and anybody who's got a question, you can come up here and talk to me. And I thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll be able to help you protect your most valuable asset, your house. Now, I don't know how to turn that off, so let's stand over here so nobody else hears what we're talking about.